A bird flying over the cuckoo's nest searching for lost freedom. Questions for your life. Do you often find reading boring and difficult? Do you feel suffocated by the thick, densely written pages of books, thinking that they have nothing to do with you? If so, today's book recommendation might completely change your mind. Ken Kesey's novel One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is not just a simple novel, it is a powerful mirror reflecting the world we live in and prompting us to reflect deeply on our own lives. This book does not require much knowledge or cultural refinement to read. On the contrary, it especially resonates with those who possess a free spirit unrestricted by the constraints of knowledge or cultivation. This novel is set in a mental hospital in the United States in the 1960s. However, this story is not only about the patients inside the hospital. It conveys a universal message about our society and daily lives, the oppression we face, and how we resist and search for freedom. So, please set aside your complicated thoughts for a moment and join me on this powerful journey. 1. Entering the oppressive space, Cuckoo's Nest. The main setting of the novel is a terrifyingly rule-bound and rigid mental hospital. It is under the absolute control of Nurse Ratched, who is nicknamed Big Nurse. Rather than using overt violence, Ratched gradually eliminates the autonomy of the patients through psychological manipulation and the pretext of system rules. Behind her calm and composed demeanor lies a ruthless determination to incapacitate the patients and erase their individuality. Under her control, the patients begin to monitor each other, fear exposing their weaknesses, and comply silently with the oppressive regime. Numerous patients with various mental illnesses gather in this ward. However, most of them seem not to suffer from serious mental disorders, but rather have been locked up due to deviating from society's definition of normality. The hospital system focuses not on healing their illnesses but on erasing their humanity and molding them into obedient individuals. They lose their vitality, lose the courage to express themselves, and live day by day in a fog-like daze. One of the most prominent patients in this ward is Chief Bromden, the Indian chief, who pretends to have hearing and mental impairments to disconnect from the world. He serves as an observer of the hospital and the narrator of this story. He fears the immense oppressive power that controls the hospital, which he calls the Combine. 2. The bird flying over the cuckoo's nest for the name of freedom, the arrival of McMurphy. One day, a man named Randall Patrick McMurphy appears in this suffocating ward. He was sentenced to prison for suspicion of rape but faked mental illness to avoid labor and ended up in this hospital. McMurphy, with his red hair, bold manner of speaking, overflowing energy, and loud laughter, immediately shatters the quiet, rigid atmosphere of the ward. From the start, he challenges Nurse Ratched's authority, questioning the strict rules and customs of the ward. McMurphy urges the patients to reclaim their freedom from the oppressive system. He teaches the patients to play poker, tells jokes, laughs with them, and even openly rebels by suggesting they watch the World Series on television. Although his attempts at resistance often end in frustration or small successes, his mere presence stirs subtle waves in the frozen hearts of the patients. Under his influence, the patients gradually rediscover their lost smiles, begin to care for each other, and express their suppressed emotions. Through McMurphy, they realize they are not merely patients but truly human beings. 3. Small acts of resistance and the recovery of humanity. McMurphy's influence grows. He leads the patients on a secret fishing trip outside the hospital and throws parties within the ward to defy the established order. These brief moments of freedom help the patients rediscover the joy and vitality of life. Particularly significant is the situation of Billy Bibbit, a young patient who was sexually repressed. Billy regains his self-esteem after forming a relationship with an external woman, symbolizing the decisive change brought about by McMurphy. The chief, Bromden, also reveals he is not truly deaf and gradually gains the courage to stand up against the oppressive system in the hospital through his interactions with McMurphy. However, these acts of resistance by McMurphy eventually bring his conflict with Nurse Ratched to a breaking point. Ratched sees McMurphy's challenges as threats to her authority and intensifies her pressure on him. She subjects McMurphy to electroshock therapy, ECT, and attempts to crush his free-spirited nature. Despite enduring great pain, McMurphy remains undeterred and returns to the patients, keeping alive the spark of hope. Ultimately, McMurphy, consumed by anger over Billy Bibbit's death, attacks Nurse Ratched, committing an act of violence. As a consequence, he receives a lobotomy. After the surgery, McMurphy loses the free, vibrant spirit he once had, becoming a plant-like being without consciousness. He is transformed into an individual who can no longer resist Ratched, entirely submitting to the system. 4. A victory in the midst of tragedy, flying over the cuckoo's nest. McMurphy's tragic end casts despair over the entire ward. When everyone is in despair and has lowered their heads, it is Chief Bromden who breaks the silence and rises. Upon seeing McMurphy in a state nearly equivalent to death, Bromden, unable to bear witnessing McMurphy in that horrific condition, suffocates him with a pillow, providing him with a mercy killing. He then throws the enormous water therapy machine that McMurphy once intended to throw at Ratched, breaking the hospital's iron bars and finally escaping from Cuckoo's nest to pursue freedom, racing toward the vast plains. Bromden's escape is not merely the escape of an individual. It signifies that McMurphy's free spirit did not die but was passed on to another. Though McMurphy's physical form is gone, his spirit continues to live on through Bromden's freedom. Now, Bromden is no longer a captive of the oppressive system but a true free individual who can autonomously choose and live his own life. 5. Questions for our lives raised by One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This novel is not just an exciting story. It raises profound questions about the world we live in our own existence. A. The system and individual freedom. In whose nest are you trapped? What does Nurse Ratched symbolize? She is not merely a villain but represents all systems that suppress individual freedom and personality. Our society is no different from a large cuckoo's nest. We are subtly injected with specific values, behavioral norms, and standards of success in schools, workplaces, media, and even within the boundaries of family. At times, even slight deviations from these standards can label us as abnormal or problematic. In fact, the rational and orderly control Nurse Ratched exhibits may exist around us as subtle and cunning forms of violence that suppress our individuality and autonomy. What about you? Are you perhaps suppressing yourself to conform to others' gazes or societal expectations? Are you silently accepting unjust workplace orders, letting your friends' opinions sway you and not expressing your own thoughts, or trying to fit yourself into ideal life images portrayed in the media? If so, you might be trapped within the invisible system of Cuckoo's Nest. B. The boundary between madness and normality. Who is normal and who is abnormal? The novel fundamentally questions what mental illness is and who defines it. McMurphy was considered a problem because he did not follow social norms, yet he was the one who helped other patients recover their humanity. Conversely, Ratched appears extremely normal and rational, yet she controls and destroys people in inhuman ways. Who is truly mad? How often have we reflected on the boundaries between normal and abnormal? When we hold different opinions from the majority, we are often seen as strange. When we do not follow the same paths as others, we are labeled as fallen behind. However, the novel asks us, are majority opinions always correct? Does the normal structure defined by society truly bring happiness to everyone? Perhaps, within those deemed abnormal, the true freedom and humanity lie hidden. C. The courage of silence and resistance. Is your voice still alive? Chief Bromden initially protects himself by hiding and staying silent, disguising himself as deaf and mute to avoid the system's gaze. However, through McMurphy's influence, he gradually regains his voice and ultimately confronts the system head-on, successfully escaping. His transformation shows us that silence can sometimes breed greater oppression. How often do we choose silence in daily life? Do we ignore injustice to avoid unnecessary trouble? When we are treated unfairly, do we accept it by saying it's just the way things are? Living while avoiding uncomfortable truths and hiding our true feelings might be slowly killing our souls. The novel tells us that although silence may seem safe, it ultimately supports the oppressive system. True courage emerges when we speak out, even with a small voice, against what is wrong. D. Empathy and recovery of humanity. What kind of existence are we to each other? McMurphy treats patients not as illnesses but as humans. He understands their pain, respects their individuality, and helps them rediscover laughter and hope. His humane nature starkly contrasts with Ratched's mechanical control. Because of McMurphy, the patients begin to rely on each other, support each other, and gradually regain their lost humanity. In modern society, we are becoming more individualistic and fragmented. We become indifferent to others' pain in our busy lives and often see each other as adversaries in competition. However, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest reminds us of the importance of empathy and solidarity. True healing and freedom are only possible when we understand each other and stand together. Someone like McMurphy might exist around you, and you might be a McMurphy for someone else. Sharing human warmth with each other is the most powerful weapon against oppressive systems. 6. For You Who Fly Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest appears to end in darkness and tragedy, yet it carries an unquenchable spark of hope. Although McMurphy's physical form vanishes, his free spirit escapes the hospital through Bromden. This conveys a message: no matter how powerful the system may be, the will and courage of an individual toward freedom can never be completely crushed. This book asks you, in which place are you trapped now? What is your cuckoo's nest that suppresses you and steals away your voice? It might be your workplace, a fixed mindset that binds you, or even your own weak heart. For you who have considered reading difficult, I dare to say this book will give you wisdom beyond knowledge and cultivation. It will broaden your vision of the world and deepen your understanding of your own life. Now, take courage. Through this book, meet McMurphy's unrestrained freedom and Bromden's quiet courage. Question the invisible system that burdens you, raise your voice, and begin preparing to fly over Cuckoo's Nest in your own way. Your life should be an unrestricted, free flight belonging solely to you. This book will become a strong wind supporting your first flap of wings toward that journey.